welcome to another episode of the Who Dat Jedi podcast. I'm Aaron, and with me, as always, is Dave and Fredo from different points in New Orleans. How you doing, guys?
Hello.
Doing okay?
Dave,
How are you?
Dave always looks around like he's trying to interpret what I was saying. That was kind of interesting. I don't know. Oh, well, okay, so we're showing off what we have to drink with tonight. What is Fredo getting? The Rally Cap. Who is that? Is that second line?
Rally Cap. It's a new brewery up in Baton Rouge.
Oh, okay.
This is their pale ale. They call it. It's all baseball themed because baseball season's in full gear now. This is their first pitch, which is their pale ale. It's pretty good.
And
picked up a whole couple of them at 504.
I guess that they'll be sponsoring our next episode of the. And so Dave's got the boot from Abita, and I just have Jameson. So.
Hey, look! If Jameson wants to sponsor us, we'll need a flight to Ireland then.
You know, it's yeah. I mean, I don't know. Are you guys whiskey guys at all?
I'm more of a bourbon guy, but I like whiskey too.
So how about
I call Irish whiskey, but
yeah, I'm an Irish whiskey guy. I mean, if it's good whiskey, I'm okay with anything really. But do you mix with anything, or is it just straight?
That's straight for the most part. I don't have a lot, so when I have it, I want to have whiskey. It's straight. And usually it's like St. Patty's Day. It's you gotta have your Guinness and your shot of Jameson. It's just mandatory.
See, we have a Stormtrooper decanter that is always filled with an Irish whiskey. So yeah, I can't. I will mix if it's bad whiskey, or if I just, want something a little bit more, lighter, I suppose. But I don't know. Dave, do you mix at all, or is it?
Yeah, I mix a lot. I like it with Coke Zero, but as long as you throw a little bit of ice in there to kind of release the bouquet, I think you're doing all right.
I also love this story my brother had. He was when he was, pardon me, involved in Nebraska politics. He was in. Pardon me, I'm going to cough again. Sorry, you can edit that out. But he was in some politician's office. I don't even remember the name, so I can't even disguise the name. But anyway, the politician's like pours Brian a drink, and it's a glass of whiskey or something, scotch or something, and Brian says, "Do you have a Coke?" And he goes, Coca-Cola. Why the hell you need a Coca-Cola for, boy? He's like, well, for a chaser. He goes, just use your own spit. So that was my brother's introduction to that. So he had to just drink, straight scotch or whatever it was. So anyway, but yeah, if it's good whiskey, and it's not meant to be slammed either, everybody. So if it's bad whiskey, then you slam it. But anyway, this is not what this podcast is about, but that's all right. Tonight is a little bit different. We're gonna be deviating from the Star Wars stuff because we teased it last week. We're going to be talking about the Justice League Snyder cut, kind of what we thought about it, and just stuff about it. But then also we're going to be talking about a little bit of Marvel stuff. There's some Marvel news. Like I said, this podcast isn't just about Star Wars. So if you're here just for the Star Wars, I'm sorry. We have one little bit of Star Wars. So I guess, Fredo, I'll just toss it to you then for that one little bit of Star Wars for tonight.
Okay, before trivia.
Just since I already said it, it's too late.
It's all right. Yeah, too late. So now, just real quick, because it is today. Happy birthday to Billy D. Williams.
Happy birthday from all of us to you. We wish it was our birthday so we could party too.
Hey. Yeah, no, he's celebrating his 84th birthday today, and I mean
84th.
84.
Yeah,
I mean, he still looks great, and he's still active, and he's still out there. So
it's all because of Colt 45.
That's right.
Does it every time, baby. Wasn't that the tagline?
Yeah, something like that.
Works every time or something like that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So happy birthday to him, and hope for many more to come.
Yep. Happy birthday, Lando. Cool. So now we'll jump into trivia. And this is my first surprise to you guys. We're going to do Justice League trivia tonight. And it's not even about the movies. I believe this is like comic book and the cartoons, stuff like that. And so I'll even play along because I don't know the answers. It's just one of these websites once again. So yeah, it's from usefultrivia.com. That sounds reliable, right? All right. So Dave, let's start with you. Which comic book did the Justice League originally appear in? Detective Comics, The Brave and the Bold, Justice League of America, or Action Comics? A lot of these we're just going to be pulling answers out of our cabooses, but
I think so. Yeah, I don't have enough of a familiarity. Action Comics.
He says Action Comics. Oh my gosh, did that sound come through?
No.
Oh darn! I should cast this so you can hear the buzzes. So let me do that. I'm going to cast the screen. This will be fun. Let's see if we get this now. So I'm sorry, Dave. No, it was not Action Comics. So I guess are we going to just keep pressing until we get it?
I will go with Justice League of America.
All right. So Fredo says Justice League of America. Nope. Did you hear it that time?
Yeah.
That was fun. All right. Well, I'm going to say Detective Comics. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
You said Detective Comics, didn't you?
I said Action.
All right, Detective. Oh crap, we're all wrong. The
Brave and the Bold.
What is the Brave and the Bold? Justice League of America
that's
made
right, Starro.
First appearance in The Brave and the Bold, number 28, March 1960, battling a giant starfish named Starro.
Which, if you saw the trailer for the Suicide Squad, James Gunn's sequel, it's in there.
Seriously?
Yep.
Ah, darn.
Yes.
All right, so Fredo, we'll start with you on this one. Where was the Justice League's original headquarters? Is it the Hall of Justice, a cave, a satellite, or the Fortress of Solitude?
Let's go with a satellite. Don't think they had the Hall of Justice to begin with.
I am sorry. Dave, get a pick from either Hall of Justice, a cave, or the Fortress of Solitude.
I'm going Fortress of Solitude.
Oh my goodness, I am so sorry. All right, so I'm going to go with the obvious one. I'm going to say Hall of Justice, and I am wrong as well. Apparently it was in the Bat Cave. No, it was in the cave side of a mountain in Happy Harbor, Rhode Island. Okay. Used throughout the Silver Age, the League abandoned it when they moved to the Justice League satellite. Man, are you guys realizing we don't know jack about Justice League here? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we won't do all of this sites because there's like 3 pages of trivia. All right, so who was the first hero to decline membership in the Justice League? So this is me. Is it Sandman, Phantom Stranger, Black Lightning, or Metamorpho? And since I don't have any idea who any of these are, I'm just going to go with the Phantom Stranger. I'm wrong.
That sounds a dirty term.
It kind of does. They all do, actually. They all sound like... Yeah. It was like,
you guys are getting us in trouble every week. It's reliable.
Is Dirty Sanchez one of these? Or sorry. Dave, is it the Sandman, Black Lightning, or Metamorpho?
Black Lightning.
I am sorry. All right. So Fredo, is it Metamorpho or Sandman?
Let me go with Sandman.
Oh my gosh, it was Metamorpho.
What are the odds?
Metamorpho teams up. That just sounds like I'm calling you a mofo.
What are the odds that all 3 of us got all 3 questions wrong?
Well, we did spend a whole summer on Marvel, so teams up with the Justice League to stop an alien menace known as the Unimaginable. When the team offers him membership, he declines, although he later agrees to be a standby member. Okay. It's you only pay half the dues,
That's right.
What do you think? We should keep going until somebody gets one right?
Until somebody gets one right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I think we're gonna get one by 6.
This is going to be a 2-parter. All right. So yeah, number 6 is easy. Well, but anyway, all right. So Dave, what teenager accompanied the Justice League on many of its earliest missions? Was it Jimmy Olsen, Marvin White, Wendy Harris, or Snapper Carr?
I'm familiar with Jimmy, so how about Jimmy?
I am sorry, that is wrong. Okay, Fredo, is it Marvin White, Barry's little brother, Wendy Harris?
No, that's his cousin.
His cousin.
Yeah, like
Marvin Barry. It's Marvin Barry White. That's what it was. All right. Wendy Harris or Snapper Carr?
Just to be silly, let's go with Snapper Carr.
Is that like Derek Carr's dog? Oh my goodness, Fredo!
Oh!
I decided to just start thinking like somebody in the 50s or 60s.
Lucas Snapper Carr tagged along on early missions, becoming both the team's mascot and an official member. Snapper, noted for speaking in beatnik dialect and snapping his fingers, resigned in Justice League of America 77 after compromising the location of the team's headquarters.
That's right, Daddy-O. They're hanging over there.
They're hanging in Bruce Wayne's house. Who gave... All right, this is mine. Or is it? No, this is Fredo's. Who gave Hal Jordan his power ring? Is it an Egyptian ghost, Superman, a dying alien, or his father?
See, I know the answer to this one, so I guess I'll just say it.
No, say it. Go.
The dying alien.
Oh, Fredo
I've been
is
sure.
the DC guy here. Hal Jordan was
Nah,
given a
hardly.
power ring and battery lantern by a dying alien named Abin Sur, whose spaceship crashed on Earth. All right, for everybody out here, here's number 6. What is Superman's Kryptonian name? Zor-El, Kal-El, Mon-El, or Jor-El? It is Kal-El. I still love the Kevin Smith talking about this, and he's referring to Kal-El, and who's the director? Peters.
Oh no, you're thinking of the producer, Peter.
No, his last name's Peters, but he said
John Peters.
John Peters. He goes. Wait a minute. Who the hell is Kal-El? Superman's Kryptonian name? Krypton. Yeah. Boom. Okay, got it. Okay, so Superman's Kryptonian name, Kal-El. Dave, which of the following does Batman not carry in his utility belt? A backup costume, a crayon, shark repellent, or reading glasses? I'm wondering if we're back into the 60s television show here.
This is why I'm thinking, because he actually had shark repellent in the 60s show. A backup costume seems a little impractical to me, so I'll go with that.
I am sorry. Fredo, is it a crayon, shark repellent, or reading glasses?
I'm going to go silly and go with shark repellent because I think that's in the movie, not the comics. Okay.
All right. Well, I've even got
a
crayon or reading glasses. I remember seeing a picture of Batman with reading glasses, so I'm going to say a crayon. Oh, it's reading glasses? Seriously? He does not carry reading glasses in his utility belt. He probably had LASIK, it says. He does carry shark repellent. Oh, that's in Batman number 117. So actually that was from...
That's way back in the day.
A crayon from Batman 149 and a backup costume in Batman number 71. Oh, darn. All right. And let's see. Who was the first African-American Justice League of America member? Vixen, Black Lightning, John Stewart, or Cyborg? I guess this is mine, huh? I'm going to say Cyborg. Nope, I'm wrong. Dave, John Stewart, Black Lightning, or Vixen?
Man, I'm shell shocked at this point. I've gotten everything wrong. John Stewart. Oh.
Are they talking about the guy from the Daily Show or
no? That's the other. That's Green Lantern from the Justice League animated show.
All right,
he was the second or third replacement.
Fredo, you got to choose with either Vixen or Black Lightning. You're saying Black Lightning?
Yep.
These are not good names, folks. While Marvel Avengers inducted the Black Panther in 1968, the Justice League of America lagged way behind, not introducing its first black member until 1984, when writer Jerry Conway introduced Vixen, a female superhero from Zambezi who adopts the abilities of animals. Boy, this is just sounding really culturally sensitive, isn't it?
It's not the year 1984.
84, yeah. Oh my goodness. Whew. Okay. Well, we'll do one last one here. Dave, which Justice League of America member is a shapeshifter? Is it the Phantom Stranger, Red Tornado, Hawkman, or Martian Manhunter?
Again, names that sound dirty.
I actually
Pretty
know
sure
this
that.
one.
What did you say? Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Martian Manhunter, right?
Hey, yeah, it is.
Hey.
Because guess what? He was inexplicably in the Snyder cut. So,
And
Out of nowhere.
inexplicably recast a character from previous movies into a whole new role, which was surprising. But anyway,
all right. So there's our trivia. Boy, was that humbling or what?
Very.
Man, woo-wee.
I can hear the screams of everybody from the distance going, "How could you not know any of that stuff?" Like,
Yeah, if
yeah.
if anybody out there is a big DC person and knew all those answers, then we want you on the show, and we'll continue the next page of this, and we'll see if you can get 100%. But all right, well, cool. So that's our little warm up for the night. Aren't we all glad it's over?
Yes.
Those are horrible names. Those are horrible names.
Again, and it's one of those points. I guess we'll get into at some point. It's DC. I mean, DC Comics. You're talking, they started in the 1910s, 1920s. I mean, comic book. Superhero comics started in 1927, I believe, with Superman. So there's a lot of stuff. They were just throwing stuff at the wall because they're like, nobody's ever gonna need to remember any of this.
What was the
But
starfish thing again? Starro? Okay.
Starro, yeah. Go look if you after this, you go look at the trailer for the Suicide Squad that James Gunn is directing. There's a moment where it looks like a giant kaiju, like Godzilla's coming out of the ocean. It's this giant starfish just barreling through the
Well,
city center.
speaking of trailers, a trailer dropped. Was it yesterday?
Yes.
It's the newest trailer for Loki. And so we are just going to go ahead and give that a watch, and then we're going to talk about it a little bit here. All right, so let's just address the elephant in the room. How do we feel about Owen Wilson being in this? And did you know that Owen Wilson was going to be in this?
I like it. I generally enjoy him. It's been a minute since I've really seen him in anything, and I didn't find it distracting.
You obviously don't frequent MTV or TNT when they're playing Wedding Crashers or, any other thing that he did with Vince Vaughn on repeat. But anyway, keep going.
Well, I think the thing with him is like if they had tried to cast him in some kind of a role that we're overly familiar with, it might have been an odd fit or a harder sell. But he's basically this bureaucrat type, so he can just put his own stamp on it in his own Owen Wilson-y way. So I like it.
Well, I mean, I do say, and by the way, I do enjoy him in the movies that I've seen him in, but he's always the same character in all those movies, you know what I mean? And so that was something that just hit me across the face. Brittany and I were talking about the first time we watched this trailer, we're like, whoa. And so it just kind of took us out of it for a second because it's like Owen Wilson, But anyway, Fredo, what was your thought on that real quick?
No, I like the trailer.
No, I mean just the Owen Wilson thing. The Owen Wilson.
Yeah,
thing.
no, I was about to say on Owen Wilson. I think he's one of those actors that does really well paired up with somebody else. Like his best movies, whether it's Wedding Crashers or Shanghai Noon, or or like Zoolander. Like he's really good at playing off on another actor, whether that's Vince Vaughn, or Ben Stiller or whoever else. So pairing him with Tom Hiddleston as Loki, it's going to create some interesting dynamics for the both of them. I think that's going to be interesting.
And I think it's also depending on how much they actually use him. He might be just like a sparing character. He features pretty prominent in the trailer. However, okay, so about the trailer in general, the thing that hit me real quick was the Sorcerer Supreme warned us about messing with where an Infinity Stone is. So when he swiped it and vanished in Endgame, then all the timelines skewed, like what she warned Bruce Banner
Uh,
about, and so I think that's a really interesting and kind of cool tie-in. And of course, he's wearing a jumpsuit that says variant, so we're dealing with, I guess, what the Loki from a different timeline, because the one that we know, he's dead.
died. Right. This was the Loki that picked up the Tesseract from 2012 when they all went back. That the Hulk took the stairs,
Yeah.
knocked Tony Stark out. The Tesseract came to his feet. He picked it up, went away. The question that kind of brings up to my head is, did he just immediately take it away and get sapped to where Owen Wilson is? Or did he go around messing with it and create further chaos? And when you see that line of the various, Back to the Future Part 2 splintering timelines, did he cause all that, before they caught up to him? Because it would be in his nature to try to go back and rewrite stuff so he's winning, and then find out, oh, it's not working. Fine, I'll take this, go someplace else, and try it again.
So, Dave, beyond my Owen Wilson question, just the trailer in general, did it make you more interested in this Loki series? I know you're already pretty geeked out about it,
Yeah.
but did it get you more excited about it, or did it raise other questions?
I'd say that, yeah, I kind of agree with what each of you said about it. And I like the very idea of the show. Um, because like of what you said with the end game stuff, it just seemed like I I think I don't remember if they had announced this show prior to Endgame coming out. I don't think that they had, but when that moment occurred in the theater, like I yelped because I knew what it meant. They're not going to rescue Loki from the trash heap, so to speak, and resuscitate him as a character and then not use him. I knew they were going to pay that off, and so I'm really excited to see what they do with it here. To Fredo's point, is he going to get to kind of run amok for a while, and now he has to undo some of the damage, so to speak? It could be a fun way to approach it.
Mm-hmm. I think, I mean, you're right. I don't think, to be fair, I don't think there was any announcement. I think the only thing post Endgame that anybody knew was um, Spider-Man: Far From Home, and then it's not until the Disney Plus shows got announced that we kind of got the idea that it was coming. I like the concept. I like the idea of casting a character like Loki that people can both root for and root against, because he's both lovable and hateable. It's a different, and it's once again completely different dynamic from the WandaVision dynamic, and it's completely different from Falcon and Winter Soldier. So it's showing, this is Marvel kind of flexing its muscles and showing we can tell different stories with different characters, and you'll love watching all of them, even though they're completely different.
Well, the funny thing is that, and I'm going to put this in quotes, but we all know that there is an easy fix to this timeline, and that's you have to get the Tesseract back to where you messed with it, so that
Right.
that moment in the lobby, he's got to get it back there. But Loki doesn't know about the whole time travel aspect, that the time heist stuff, and so does that, are we going to maybe possibly even see other cameos from the Avengers? Somebody's going to say, well, here's what you need to do, this is what we did. I don't know. But it's like I said, there's the quote unquote easy fix to this, but it's, so I don't know. They're going to be running around, like you said, Back to the Future too, or are we going to be chasing down the sports almanac and and stuff like that? It'll be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so like I said, the only thing that was jarring was Owen Wilson, just because he always sounds like Owen Wilson, but I mean, could be just fine. So,
Well, it's interesting from the way this trailer presents it. Owen Wilson's bringing Loki along, but not everybody within his organization, whatever it is on board with it. So that could create a dynamic for conflict for Loki and Owen Wilson, where he's sticking his neck out saying, no, this version or this variant of Loki can change and help me do this.
Well, it also stands to reason that with skewed timelines, that there are other Loki variants out
Hmm.
there.
Which would be an interesting moment if we start seeing all those brands. You know who we haven't heard is involved in this is Chris Hemsworth, and I wouldn't be surprised if he makes a cameo appearance at some point. Just because, particularly if you're going back through Loki's back steps at some point or another, they should bump into one another. And I wonder if it'll be past Thor before Ragnarok, where they kind of had their reconciliation, or if it's post Endgame Thor, where he's gonna get embraced and hugged by his brothers, be like, "What the heck is going on?" So,
Yeah.
Well, at this point in the timeline that they were in, um, all of his family members are still alive.
right,
His mother is still alive. His father, Thor, um, Hela, Hela's still alive.
right.
Um, so there's a lot of potential for Asgardian adventures there.
We'll get more as Guardians of the Galaxy.
And so that is coming June 11th. Is that right?
Hmm.
So yeah, so it's not too far away around the corner. So yeah, all right. Well, so let us know what you thought about the Loki trailer if you're looking forward to Loki, whatnot. But let's stick with the Marvel stuff. We haven't talked about. We're 3 episodes in, and we have not talked about Falcon and Winter Soldier. So this is just 3 friends sitting around a table at a bar. A virtual bar. How are you guys liking this series so far? Is it what you were thinking it was going to be? Is there anything that has caught you by surprise? Um, yeah. So just go ahead, free form. What do you think?
Well, I guess I'll start. My biggest takeaway so far is that I will echo what I said about WandaVision, which is that I didn't expect them to necessarily take these themes as far as they have taken them to this point. And I mean, in particular, in this case, racism in America. And this show so far is like a brutal critique of where we are in this country right now. Um, and I think as well, it's kind of a fun, tongue in cheek critique of the MCU and what they had done prior to this point. It's like you could look at it and interpret it that way as well, because like Cap is still on center stage. The white guys are all on center stage, and they got, the black sidekick. And it's like looking in a mirror now with New Cap. And so I think with what makes it as effective as it is, at least for me, is that a lot of people will watch that um, and not pick up on it. They'll watch like episode 2 and they'll see Falcon upset with the new Cap and that scenario and that whole situation. And a lot of people's reaction to that might be, well, why is he upset? You know? Um,
Right.
and I think like they're kind of walking that fine line between beating you over the head with it, um, and not taking it far enough. And so, like for me right now, it's really working. And I think it's a story. That's a story that needed to be told. Um, and they were never going to make a movie out of it, I don't think. And again, that's part of the critique. Oh, this character's not an A-lister. We can't make a whole movie about him.
Well, that's going to
Mhm.
get into our Justice League commentary here in a little bit. Um,
um, but yeah, I don't think they were going to do that. And so this is as good as it's going to get. And so I want them to push some boundaries, and they've done that.
not as deep as your analysis there, but one thing that struck me, first of all, Brittany and I are digging it. I think Anthony Mackie is right now he can do no wrong. I think he's just great on the screen. We need to take a screenshot of Dave right now. This is the perfect shot for you. Is he frozen on yours?
Yes, he
um,
is.
so, But Anthony Mackie, from born and bred in New Orleans, and that's got to go on something. But he's doing a great job. But the thing that the whole plot of the super serum, it almost smacks of The Incredibles, where once everybody's super, then nobody is.
Nobody is.
Once everybody's special, then nobody's special. And there is that. Um, well, and of course, it's also kind of interesting that um, how people have reacted to the blip, and we got a little
Hmm.
bit of it um,
One
in a
division,
little bit
right?
of in WandaVision, but in this one in particular, there's saying that you know, things were better for us. So Thanos was right, is what they're saying. Things were better
Hmm.
for us when there was less people, and then when they all came back, we got shoved back down to, second class citizens again.
Hmm.
So that's a really interesting take on this. Like I said, Dave, you were in and out, but I just said one of the interesting thing is that how people are reacting to the blip. That actually these shows are showing that there are people who agreed with Thanos that
Or who benefited.
benefit. Well, their lives got it was better with half the population gone.
Hmm.
And then when they came back, so it's really kind of interesting because Thanos has always been that thing. He's the bad guy, but he's kind of got a little bit of a point. You always felt like you could. It was actually a villain you could kind of understand, I suppose. If that sounds totally psycho, I apologize, but it's just he's a complex villain. But anyway, that's what these people are saying is like life was better, and but like I said, once the super serum, like I said, if we can become super beings ourselves, then maybe our lot in life will become better because that's what people respect. Um,
Hmm.
so there's a lot of complex stuff going on, but like I said, I'm totally digging Anthony Mackie, and he and Sebastian Stan have a great chemistry on screen, and digging that. So yeah, so far so good, and always Emphas Nest. But Fredo, what do you think so far?
Yeah, no, I'm gonna basically echo the majority of what you and Dave said. Um, I think one of the couple of things that kind of struck me. Number one, I'm really liking that they've gone back to the idea of the super soldier serum and the fact that, look, if you ever saw the Incredible Hulk, they wrapped that idea. The fact that Bruce Banner's gamma radiation accident, Thunderbolt Ross tells us, no, he was supposed to be working on refining and perfecting the original super soldier serum again, Captain America. So the idea that this has kind of been in the background, that the U.S. government didn't just let that idea that they knew had worked once die and have been testing it on people, particularly the fact that they tested it on African American soldiers and then taking, taking his blood to use to further develop both, the U.S. government and then through him Hydra to make other Winter Soldiers and whatnot. It creates it's a level of complexity that usually rarely comes into comic books and comic book properties. So I'm appreciative of that. I like the fact that, like I said, that they're not making it a hey, the blip went happened and everything went back to normal. No, in a real world setting, people disappearing, half the population disappearing and then coming back would have massive repercussions, and on a personal as well as a global level. So it's good that they're acknowledging all of that, and it's something that Marvel had done before. I mean, the Netflix shows Daredevil and Jessica Jones and Punisher all dealt with the immediate aftermath of Avengers 1, particularly the first season of Daredevil. That was all about all of them getting those post Battle of New York construction contracts. So that's intriguing that they found a way to rope in the larger MCU, making it feel part of the movies without being in the movie. Uh, and I really liked the last episode. It's gonna be funny because I like Zemo, which Daniel Bruhl's a great actor, but we had not seen much of him beyond Civil War. but here he kind of got to flex. He got to be, and you get the sense that he's trying to be smarter than the two guys that are shepherding him, that are watching him. But then of course the cliffhanger at the last episode just kind of go like, yep, they don't forget, the writers in this show are not forgetting stuff that happened before him.
So first of all, I got to say to Dave's point, it got me thinking. Now you're absolutely. I'm seeing so many things. Well, first of all, the one thing that hit you over the head was, the Tuskegee, comparison, like Fredo, brought up. But then also, I remember, Falcon saying, Sam saying, "You mean there was a black super soldier and you didn't tell me?" It was like, it's kind of like 50s and 60s rock and roll. It's like, the Beatles and Elvis Presley and all these white guys are, stole rhythm and blues, that they heard from African American musicians, and they're the ones getting all the acclaim, and so it is reminding us of, how far we haven't come. You're right. But the other thing I want to ask real quick to you guys. So the thing that's everybody's flying around with their predictions of who the power broker is. Who do you think the power broker is just sitting right now?
Can I dovetail off that your last comment before we touch on the power broker? Like
Can I stop you?
Yeah,
I could mute you, but
you never have to. You never have to ask, Aaron. You can always dive in like that. Isaiah, that character, he just validates the decision that Sam made. It's like I can't, in this country, I cannot be Captain America as a black man, and I won't be accepted. And by episode 2, he's had that decision completely validated, and of course Bucky doesn't see it because it's outside of his experience.
Yeah, he's getting turned down at the bank for no good reason whatsoever,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, like, it's such a powerful critique in that way, that, it's like, even like somebody who's like on your side, who should be your friend, you fought alongside, doesn't see it, doesn't get it, doesn't understand it. And I'm really going to be interested to see how they ultimately pay that off. But yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, because we've seen it from the trailers, Sam will end up with the shield at some point. So even if he doesn't quite absorb the full mantle of Captain America, he's going to have to come to some sort of peace within himself about some of it. At the same time, I do love when, it was kind of interesting when they had the Trouble Man discussion in the last episode. And Steve was like, it really captures the African American experience. And Sam's like, he's out of line, but he's right. It's like, wait a minute, that's not your place to say this, but you're not wrong. So in a lot of instances, I love the fact that they're willing to kind of go there with some of these discussion points. Because again, it's not really brought up in a comic book, in air quotes, movie or TV show. Because ultimately, it's about big, strong super dudes and super girls punching one another.
Well, but even let's go back to our trivia game here. We're talking about how awful these names were. I mean, let's face it. I mean, comic books they were trying to be inclusive, but they end up being really quite insensitive and borderline racist. In doing some of this stuff. It's like, I mean, I don't know.
It's like, for a while, every black superhero had to be called the Black something or other.
Right. So I don't know.
And they made that joke in the series. They made that joke where the kid comes up to him and is like, "You're the Black Falcon." He's
yeah,
like,
that's right.
No, I'm just Falcon.
No, or when he says, "What are you, the White Panther?" It's like White Wolf.
Yeah, the White Wolf. So anyway, okay. So then, who's your guess for who the power broker is?
That's a good question. Honestly, I don't know that we've met the character yet.
I don't know.
If it's a he or she.
They're really trying to make it seem like it's Sharon.
Sharon, which might be a red herring.
Yeah,
because it does explain. Why did she go home? If they forgave Bucky because being an unthinking assassin for generations. They could have forgiven Sharon Carter for stealing Cap's shield and Falcon's wings after 5 years of the blip.
Yeah. You know, I kind of like the idea that I've been seeing spinning around that it's maybe oh crap, now I just lost his name. Zola.
Mhm.
Oh, Armin Sola,
Yeah.
Yep.
the computer dude.
Yeah,
Now,
because apparently in the comics he like takes on robot form, robot AI, form. So, will we get? I mean, he was obviously involved in the super soldier serum. So that's kind of an interesting thing. Yeah, the Sharon Carter one, it's like that seems to be too easy. That they when she gets in the car and makes everybody think that she's a bad guy. You know. But anyway, so I'm kind of in the Zola camp. I don't know, Dave. What do you think, or have you been
Solo
thinking
would
about?
be a lot of fun. Another fun one would be Baron Strucker, who's supposed to be dead, but that rarely stops you in a comic book movie. It'd be fun if, like, all of a sudden, oh, he's not dead, and then you get to, see what he's been up to for the last several years. So that might be a fun one.
yeah, because much in the same way as Rise of Skywalker needed a big bad to bring our hero and our villain from the previous movies together to fight a common enemy, you get the sense that um, there's got to be a common enemy that everybody kind of unites to face off at the end. That's Falcon, Winter Soldier, Zemo, John Walker, all these other characters who are not seeing eye to eye
Well,
will have to either come together or together in order to defeat.
well, okay. So first of all, I want to go back to as I think about this, it's like maybe Sharon Carter could be the power broker because they're so deliberate in using the pronoun he when talking about the power broker. So that immediately throws you off the scent of Sharon. So that might be. But the other thing is that we're assuming that the power broker is a bad guy. I mean, you know, that the power broker is the ultimate person that we're the antagonist of this whole show. And I really think it's Enfys Nest and her crew that we're, that everybody's
Mhm.
going to be more concerned with. And I think the power broker is probably tangentially. I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something there.
No, and it could, in some ways, the power broker might end up being kind of like an underling or a henchman of another big baddie, like think somebody like Doctor Doom, that kind of thing,
Mm.
or even somebody who works for Shuri, or whoever
Well, that was the
is managing some stuff, for Wakanda
and that
outside.
was the cool thing at the end of this last episode. We're getting a Wakanda link in here.
Yeah, with
So
Ayo,
yeah.
right?
So anyway,
I,
so
I I like Strucker, and I also like Zoloft because of the Hydra
Yeah.
influence. Because there's just been a lot of Hydra talk, even going back to WandaVision. It's just been kind of bubbling up from under the surface. Hydra just keeps coming back up, and I wouldn't be surprised if they did that.
well, all right. Well, switching universes from Marvel into
Doo-doo-doo,
DC.
doo-doo-doo, doo-doo-doo,
Yeah.
doo-doo-doo.
I still love. This was part of one of my Facebook memories. It was a meme that I shared a couple of years ago. It says Marvel quote Infinity War is the greatest crossover event in history, and then it shows Hanna-Barbera Hold My Beer, and it shows Scooby-Doo with Batman and Robin arresting Joker. So anyway, so we're going into DC. We're going to be talking about the Justice League Snyder Cut. We've all watched this.
All 4
So
hours.
real quick, did you all do it in one piece or did you watch it a day at a time? We did it
One
all in one
sitting.
piece, one setting.
One
One
sitting.
setting.
All right. Dave seems thrilled that he did it all one sitting. So I guess first of all, let's just get our quick, just don't give your doctoral thesis because a lot of our thoughts and everything will come through the discussion here. But just your initial reactions to it. I'm going to kick it off, and don't at me on Twitter on this one, but I'm sorry. I like the theatrical version better than this. I thought first of all, I'm not gonna. It was just a better movie that told a more coherent story. The Snyder cut was everything thrown into a file drawer, and it's like sifting through things, and it's like, oh, this makes sense, but you have to sift through a lot of papers to find that one paper that helps explain something in the other movie. The beginning was, to me, was slow. Again, there were things that really helped. I really appreciated understanding why the mother boxes were awoken. Um, but overall, it was kind of one of those things where it's just like, and we'll talk about this, our director's cuts, better. Um, just because everything's in there doesn't mean that it's a good movie. And there was a lot of good stuff in there, but it was not a good movie. That's just my take on it. So, Dave, what's your initial reaction to it?
Yeah, okay, so I don't want us to go down too far a path of either bashing or praising it. So
I
I'm
would
gonna
agree.
try to go like I'm gonna try to go kind of middle of the road with it because that is my honest reaction to it. Um, I think it was too long. Um, I I had problems with that. If you look at it as kind of like a mini series, compare it to Falcon and Winter Soldier, for example. If you approach it from that sort of mentality, I think it works better. And I think to their credit, they kind of tried for that with all the different chapters. They tried to come up with natural breakpoints, so somebody could get up and use the restroom or whatever if they needed to.
Hit pause. Now
Um,
it's like the VHS tape ran out. You have to put in the other
yeah,
one.
yeah. Tape 2 of Titanic is going in.
Yeah.
Um, so it was a bit much, but I think for reasons we'll get into, I think it's definitely an improvement on the original.
And can I amend mine just a little bit there, because I agree
Mm-hmm.
with everything you said. And like I said, I thought the other one was better. Um, but there was good stuff in here. It's like, for example, I just want to throw this out there real quick. The whole cyborg element of it, it's like, that's all awesome, but that should be its own movie. That should be its own movie. It's kind of like Marvel will give you little hints of stuff, and it's like, then in the Captain Marvel movie you'll get all the stuff you want to know about Captain Marvel. And that's the way I felt originally about Justice League. Is like, they gave me enough to know what was going on with Cyborg, but I knew it wasn't his story, it wasn't Batman's story, it wasn't Wonder Woman's story, it wasn't Aquaman's story. They gave you enough to just kind of whet your appetite. This one, it was like I said, so anyway, but like I said, there was a lot of good things in there that explained a lot. So I don't want to sound like a negative Nancy, but it's just like, if they would have just made it into the separate movies, it would have been a whole lot better. I'm sorry, Dave, keep going.
Well, I'm going to tell you one last thing off of that, and then we'll let Fredo talk. When uh, Batman versus Superman was released, it got a pretty negative reaction because it was a darker film, right? And a lot of people just reacted poorly to it. The critics didn't like it, audiences didn't like it. It didn't make $1 billion like it was supposed to. And so eventually they created the director's cut for that movie. And at the time, before that director's cut was released, and then in the immediate aftermath, so many people said, "Oh, it's so much better now. It's so much better now." And it's like, well, he added 40 minutes to an already really long movie, and it was kind of a preview of what we just got in that way. And I couldn't sit there in good conscience and say I didn't like I'm gonna subject myself to another 40 minutes of a movie that I didn't like to begin with. And in this case, I thought it was such an interesting thought experiment that it's like, well, I have to watch this because it's just like this doesn't happen, where the director gets free reign.
And I think that is an interesting point to bring up before we let Fredo give his, you know, this this is not this is like if the Beatles released a song and then they broke up, and the song that Paul McCartney put together was against what John Lennon thought it should, so you essentially you have two different songs. It's so you can't really say that one is better than the other because they are just totally different interpretations of, the notes, the lyric. It's so um, I think that's an important thing to bring up here, is that this is not like, Lord of the Rings, where it's like, all right, we could only release 2.5 hours in the theater. Well, now we'll give you all the stuff we left on the cutting room floor so you can watch it for 10 hours of your life, whatever. So that's kind of an interesting thing. So Fredo, what was your take on Justice League?
So I mean, initially, I think it's more coherent, and I think in some ways that's to its benefit. I also agree with Dave in regards to length. There is a point where a movie stops being a movie and starts being a mini series. You know, when you're even if you're telling one coherent beginning, middle, and end, you can do so over many episodes. And I wonder if this would have been better served, not just simply going back with it. We'll give you 2 more hours. It's a 6 hour event. You'll get an hour an episode, an hour every week. You get to see the Snyder cut in the fullest, biggest, whatever option, whatever that you want. Obviously, that's not what they wanted. They want, Zack Snyder wanted this. He wanted to make a movie. We have to remember, though, back when all of this was planned, the original plan for Justice League was 2 movies. So this was supposed to be not be one, but part one and part two. After the failures of Batman v Superman, DC and Warner Brothers executive panic said, okay, fine, we're just giving you 1 movie. And that's when Joss Whedon came in. That's when they brought in Jeff Johns and Peter and John Burke to manage Zack Snyder, and stuff kind of, devolved from there. As an exercise, and I think I agree with Dave also that it's an interesting exercise. I do struggle to think who is the audience for this beyond people who are already fans of this. Like, I totally get it. If you're fans of Man of Steel and Batman v Superman, this is the Justice League that will go up next to those. You can just take out the one that you saw in 2017, throw it out, it never happened. But at the same time, it's also an interesting just dynamic because all of this stuff, a lot of the stuff, the length of this thing, a lot of it's to set up stuff that will never happen. Martian Manhunter will never happen. A Green Lantern movie from The Ring Left Behind will never happen. The Nightmare movie with Batman holding a gun and fighting evil Superman will never happen. Even though there's people out there thinking, oh, maybe this will be the Kickstarter of that. And, Warner Bros. Will do a Snyderverse and then DC. It's like, they're not going to throw more money at this. I think this was an opportunity that presented itself thanks to the pandemic, thanks to the need for HBO to have content, and the opportunity to placate the fan base that had been screaming for it.
So, I'm just going to lead into this next one because all right. I really I struggle with understanding people because it's like the things that I've heard is like, that again, you talk about the Snyderverse, and it's supposed to be dark, and it's supposed to be serious, and it's supposed to be this, that, and the other. It's like, and they were upset by some of the, more lighter and funnier things that happened within the original Justice League, which that I really liked that element of it. And it was totally missing from this cut. Everything that made me chuckle for a split second in Justice League was gone. So I was just kind of in this, and that was jarring to me. So why do they want that? And probably you'll find the same group of people who will think that Thor Ragnarok was the greatest thing ever created in the Marvel universe because it was so funny, and it was Taika Waititi, and it was lighthearted, and it was this, So I get, I know it's Marvel versus DC, but it's, I don't. So let me just get into this question then. What was wrong? And maybe this is to Dave first because he said he didn't like it, and that's cool. Not everybody's gonna like the movie. I like Justice League. What was wrong with Justice League? Why did people have such a problem with it that they were clamoring for the Snyder cut?
The biggest thing was that it was compromised, and everybody knew that. Um, they
I
didn't
guess
really stand behind it.
maybe that's why I liked it, because I did not know it was compromised. I just knew
I
Justice League
mean,
movie was out. All right, cool. So that wasn't on my radar. I wasn't reading up on that like I do Star Wars. So I'm sorry. I'll let you keep going, Dave. But that's an interesting
well,
point.
what I will add to what I was saying is that Rise of Skywalker, right? We've talked about that movie a lot. Um, and one of the first things I said about that movie when it came out, after it came out, was like they tried to shove too much in there. It's like, why didn't you make this into two movies? It doesn't have to be episode 1 through 9. It can be episode 1 through 10. And I think a lot of that came about because of this idea of making compromises and like, well, okay, we are rushed and we are trying to fit a bunch of stuff in there. And we're trying to wrap up the saga. And like the original cut of the Justice League was very similar in those respects. It was like we're going to completely slice out huge chunks of character development and story development because we don't have time for it. And so, like, we talked about the pacing of Rise of Skywalker, right? The beginning where it's just like da 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 da. You're jumping from thing to thing to thing to thing. The original cut of the Justice League was very similar in that way, and I think it kind of belies, even if you didn't know, and like Aaron, you said you didn't know the backstory about what happened, the director change, and all the stuff, the drama. Um, Even if you didn't know those things, I think like the cut of the movie, the pacing of the movie, the fact that there were sacrifices in terms of story and character, it all sort of points to this being the case.
And
And
that's what
so
I
that, yeah,
said. That I'm sorry. That's what I said. That there are things in the Snyder cut that made Brittany and I go, "Oh, that makes a lot more sense now." Oh, that makes
right.
a lot more sense now. However, I will take issue with that. I don't think that the huge character arcs are necessary in the Justice League movie. That I
Mhm.
think that like I go back to the cyborg part of it, and that is a story to be told, but not within the contents of the Justice League movie. That I think they could have done a better job of laying the breadcrumbs so it wasn't as convoluted in the original cut. But the same thing goes for Aquaman. Same thing goes
In a
for
Oh,
roundabout, in a roundabout way, I agree with that, but like I take it a different direction. When I watched that movie for the very first time, that was my biggest critique was that like, well, there's no development for Cyborg, and it's like you're saying the same thing. There was no development for Cyborg. It's because they never created that development elsewhere, and so they just sort of removed it.
yeah.
I would rather it have occurred elsewhere,
well, but okay,
but
so but
failing
hold
that,
on. So remind me, um, Captain Marvel came out after Endgame, correct?
No, came out before Endgame, after Infinity War.
Oh,
Remember, you got the teaser at the end of Infinity War.
so Marvel is better at lining these things up. Okay, but I
No,
mean,
what happens is, and I'll just, it's a difference of how you want to carve up this pizza. Uh, Marvel's model is we introduce our characters in their own story, so you get to know them, you get the backstory, you get to like them, and then when we bring the big team up movie, we don't need to reintroduce you to them. You know who they are. DC's model was we're going to be building up to the big team up movie. We'll give you a Superman movie, we'll give you a Superman versus Batman, and by the way, here's Wonder Woman. And hey, we hinted at the other guys. And Justice League, we're going to introduce Aquaman, Cyborg, and the Flash. And then depending on who people gravitate towards, that's who's getting the movie. So Cyborg was supposed to get a movie, Aquaman got a movie, the Flash is going to get a movie. that was the idea. The idea is use Justice League as the jumping off
Well,
point, not the come together point.
and I tell you, okay, so this is dumb Aaron here, but I'm going to tell you that, you know, when I first watched Justice League, I knew enough. I wasn't thrown off by Cyborg's, you know, lack of story arc. It was enough. I
Right.
was introduced to Cyborg for the first time because I was not a big comic book, you know, so I was like, I knew enough from what they were giving me. Okay, I can kind of put these pieces together loosely, and he's, you know, and it starts. So I did not feel cheated, but maybe it's
Right.
because of it's kind of one of the things that they tell us in, you know, in technical writing. They said, remember that you're cursed with knowledge. And that, you know, because you know the product so well and you want to tell everything about that product, that sometimes you have to, you know, you have to force yourself to make some edits and some changes because, you know, the overall article is not about the entire product. It's about this one portion of it. And so, so like I said, as I did not have, and I'm not saying Dave's, you know, your reaction is wrong or your reaction is invalid. It's just interesting to me that we're coming from two different places and we have two different reactions to Justice League. You felt like I said, you were hornswoggled and I didn't. So I just find that interesting. I'm just going to keep on talking because Fredo really wants to say something. I keep hearing his vocal changes.
Actually, I was just going to say that what I found most difficult with the release of Justice League was how jarring the back and forth was, because it's a Frankenstein movie, by which I mean you can totally tell that there's some Joss Whedon sensibilities in the quippy dialogue, the jokes, which are all gone now, and Zack Snyder, you know, very Wagnerian, larger than life, the end of the world is coming kind of thing. That's dour and dark and feels your real grim, dark, you know, darkness that's grim and grimness that's dark. And that going back and forth didn't quite work for me as well. That said, I do think, like I said at the beginning, if you take the Justice League movie that we got in 2017 and this, they're basically the same thing. It's not that it's a different movie. What's different is it's not like it's cake and this is sushi. They're both cake. It's just this was vanilla and this is vanilla with a different frosting.
I will tell you the thing that I totally appreciated was the addition of Darkseid, because that made Steppenwolf make a whole lot more sense. So I appreciated that. The thing I didn't really understand though is, the thing maybe I don't understand is that I find interesting is that take your Frankenstein comment here. They knew it was going to be a Frankenstein movie. So why not spend your time in maybe cleaning up some of that instead of changing the look of Cyborg and Steppenwolf? And you know what I mean? They spent money and time on changing some of these things that did that really go against your vision that Steppenwolf didn't quite look like what you? I don't know.
It suffers from the same problem that Rise of Skywalker suffered. They had a release date locked in. They wanted to get it over the finish line, and they already spent so much money in it and spent so much more money marketing afterwards. They just went and said, "We need to get something out there." And this is where, you know, recognizing some of those behind-the-scenes struggles and fights kind of helps understand why we got what we got. You're right. In a smart world, Warner Brothers executive or president says, we cannot release this way. But remember, they released it with the infamous Henry Cavill mustache CGI. They released it with Steppenwolf looking like he did. They released it with stuff not making some sort of sense. But they knew that they just needed to get it out. They just wanted to get it on the TV screens, out on the release date, and just be done. And you know what the difficulty is, looking back on what Snyder put out, even if I'm not necessarily its biggest fan, I can I can respect it, because at least I go, well, at least he had an idea where he was going. It wasn't just let's get this sucker out the door. It's no, we're going out with a purpose.
I will tell you that, I mean, like I said, Britt and I were the one moment that made us both go, "What?" was hearing Joker talk about a reach around, and it was like, "Whoa, hello, kids." Okay.
That is Zack Snyder's
but
humor.
so I do want to ask this though, because we've seen fan edits of movies, and we've talked about, you know, like the YouTube channels of how it should have ended and stuff like that. And I think this is a very interesting thing about art now because of what computers can do, and you know, and how everybody has access to these tools now, so they can take their movie, and like the guy who took the Phantom Menace and took out all the Jar Jar Binks stuff.
Right.
Is this good from an art standpoint? Is this, let me take you all back to, Da Vinci is, painting the Mona Lisa, and somebody, 100 years later says, here, let me take it. And they take it off the wall and they fix it for you, because that's what is going on. Now it could, you could also argue it's my interpretation of the art, which is fine, but but like I said, is this good? We can even talk about George Lucas taking his own movie and tweaking it, or is it, should you put it out there and that's what it is and let it be what it is? I don't know. What do you guys think?
I have an initial response for you, but I think you're hinting at something a little bit deeper, and I want to add to that as well.
Assuming a lot that I'm hinting at something deeper, but anyway, go ahead.
Well,
he's hinting at a Martian Manhunter.
Exactly.
Sorry, that threw me. That was
yeah.
Yeah.
That threw me too.
Yeah. So anyway, go ahead, Dave.
Firstly, to answer your question, I'm okay with it within the context that we just saw. Zack Snyder had a creative vision for his movie, and for reasons that most people are familiar with. And again, like, I think a lot of people that are listening to this probably aware of this story. They lost their daughter to suicide during the making of this movie. Zack and his wife. They were getting a lot of studio pressure to release a certain version of the movie, and eventually they just stopped fighting. They said, fine, we're stepping out of this for a while. And so the studio then, turned it over to Whedon, and we got what we got. But I think, like, to answer your question in that, for, in a very literal way, I think I'm great with this happening because he is the person with the vision. He is the person that had an idea and he wanted to see it through. And they came back to him with $70 million and said, okay, let's do this thing. And you get to release your version of the movie. We get to drive subscribers to HBO. Everybody wins. So from that perspective, I'm very happy that it occurred. But to kind of get to like what you're hinting at, Fredo shared this article with us today. We were going back and forth sharing articles and sort of prepping for the show, and it was from a Vanity Fair, and it was a preview of the Snyder Cut. And I loved this quote from a clinical psychologist who they interviewed, which was, "What I have observed is an enduring false sense of ownership from fans, which can manifest as abuse, threats, and strong, intense reactions when a story doesn't go their way."
Boy, we haven't talked about that before, have we?
They're shouting.
Anybody
Well, there was this whole online campaign, release the Snyder Cut, right? This is part of the story. To continue her quote, they're shouting and people are listening to them. Even if it's negative comments, they're getting positive reinforcement to continue down that path. And if she didn't just nail every fan base that's currently out there, and I actually, like, had to take a step back from it, and it's like, am I too harsh on with Star Wars? Am I, am I? Because every now and then we'll get into a passionate debate on this show, and the tensions will build. But I think it's tempting for people, again, the ownership of art. It's tempting for people to say, "This is mine." It's like, this is my thing. This is my Star Wars. This is my Snyder
Well,
verse.
that is, I know what you're going. I'm sorry I interrupt you, but it's my thing. It's that it's what I've always struggled with is when you write a song, create a painting, whatever art it is, when you create that and you put it out there, who does that art belong to at that point? You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like now
Well,
it's not like I'm giving you, it's kind of like sharing a Google Doc. It's I think I'm giving you access to this art, but I'm only giving you viewer access to it. I'm not giving you I'm not giving you comment access. I'm not giving you edit access, to be sure. That's why we have the copyright law. You can't just go and change Star Wars and release it, and make money on it and take out Jar Jar Binks without getting your butt sued. But
right.
however, I mean, in music, it happens all the time where people are doing covers of songs, and but every time I hear a cover of a song, it makes me excited and apprehensive at the same time. It's like, are you really saying that you can do Rocket Man better than Elton John? That's kind of what, now if you cover a song, you might just be covering the song because you love the song. And that's cool, but when you're putting it on a CD and making money and you pay for the rights to do that, there is a little bit of that. Yeah, I'm saying that I have a better vision for Rocket Man than Elton John.
And in this particular case, Zack Snyder had every right
You're
to
right.
have that
You're right.
opinion,
And this is
right?
a very special case. This is a very special
Yeah.
case. I get it. But but however, the part of it is like, who owns this Justice League vision? Is it Warner Brothers, or is it Zack Snyder, or is it Joss Whedon? You know what I mean? It's like, who ultimately, it's, if we want to use music history as an example, it's like, Handel wrote for patrons, right? Mozart wrote for patrons. I want you to write music for my boat party. So here's
Right.
water music. I want you to write music for my fireworks party. All right, here's music for the Royal Fireworks. Now Handel's name is on it and he, it's his forever, but, ultimately his patron paid for it. You know what I
Yeah, and
mean?
in
It's
this
it's it's
instance, yeah,
something I
and in
struggle with.
this,
It's something I struggle with. It's like, who
yeah,
owns the art at that
I
point?
mean, like in this instance, the owner ultimately is Warner Brothers. They footed the bill. They hired the artist. Zack Snyder can say he owns the vision,
And the winner in
but
all
the art
this,
ultimately falls to Warner
the
Brothers.
winner in this all the ultimate winner is Warner Brothers, because they made a
Hmm.
gazillion dollars, on Justice League. And yeah, it didn't make as much as they liked, but then they made money
I
on,
actually lost money.
well, they there's a lot of people who bought DVDs and stuff like that too. I mean, they're not hurting. Um,
They were about 136 in the black. I mean, I'm sorry, in the red after everything was said and done, because precisely because of the negative reaction that people had to Batman v Superman, which didn't make as much money than Suicide Squad. Wonder Woman was kind of a big success, but they were, by the time Justice League got out, it was like everybody was just abandoning ship on the DC extended universe,
so
which
I stand
kind of
correct.
goes,
I stand corrected.
no, 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 but it goes to show the idea of when you are a studio like Warner Brothers and you hire an artist, you're doing it because you want that artist to connect with an audience. Whatever you think of Zack Snyder's vision, Zack Snyder found an audience. May not have been to the levels that Warner Brothers wanted, but he found an audience, and that's the audience that kept fighting for the Snyder Cut after Justice League got out.
Now, why aren't people clamoring for the Kevin Smith version of Superman that he was hired to write and he wrote, and then it was, no, we're going to give it to
Tim Burton.
Tim Burton, and he's like, no, I want my own writer. And so he wrote his own version, and we almost got the Nicolas Cage, version. Thank God we didn't. You know what I mean? It's like people kind of
Mhm.
pick their battles here. But to the point though, Dave, you're absolutely right. This is a totally different situation. This is like, Zack Snyder had begun work on it. It's kind of like
He,
started building the house, had most of the house built, and
mhm.
then had to walk away from the project. And
This is why
Yeah,
I'm this is why I'm so excited that it happened. Like even though like the final product for me wasn't like,
and that and
I
that's my thing, right? Is that the final movie was not. I wish they would have paid him another $10 million so they could have, you know, it seems like they just kind of chucked all the ingredients in there in the order they shot it, and it was just kind of a draggy movie. So I'm sorry,
no, I
Dave.
think,
Keep going.
and I think that was part of his stuff. From what the Vanity Fair article states, Zack Snyder had a rough cut, meaning he had all the scenes he wanted in the movies filmed and put together. They were still finishing up. They didn't have a full score. They had a score, but it wasn't finished. They had some special effects that weren't finished. They didn't have full edit. So he had a rough cut of what he wanted, which is what he took home when he left the project for good on a laptop, which is what he brought back. But paying him more, I think he made it clear to Warner Bros. Because he didn't get paid for anything for making the Snyder Cut. He said flat out, "What I want is 100% control. You will not tell me to make one edit. You will not tell me to make one addition. I will shoot what I want. I'll shoot it the way I want it. I'll put it out there. You'll be happy, but that's what I want."
I will also say this: the Snyder Cut explained Batman v Superman a hell of a lot better as well. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there's like I sat there going, "Oh wow, okay, that makes sense now."
Mm-hmm.
Why is the Flash visiting, Bruce
His dad.
Wayne in
Oh,
in
sorry.
in a dream, and what is this dream that Bruce Wayne is having? What's this all about? It's like all a mess. So this helped explain all that junk as well. Um,
Mm-hmm. No, and I think in some ways the biggest, in an interesting way, Batman ends up being the biggest loser, to put it that way, of the Snyder Cut, because he was a far more active participant in the 2017 Justice League, the theatrical version. And this one, the more the movie goes forward, the less of a role he takes, which is an interesting. I mean, like in the final battle, the dude's outside just shooting random parademons. He's not even involved in the active battle to stop Steppenwolf. I will say, I did like the denouement with the Flash. I found that a lot better in this one than Justice League 2017. Dave, you want to say?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I also too think it's important that we bring up that Joss Whedon is problematic and was problematic on set. Um,
yeah,
Women and actors of color both had issues with him. And what was really interesting for me is like there was a breakdown of like shot by shot of the scenes involving women in the two versions. And the new version is miles better, both in terms of representing women, in terms of screen time, but also in how they're represented. No butt shots and all that sort of nonsense. It was much more tastefully done. And by all accounts, Snyder is a good guy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And like that colors your thinking too, at least for me. I like, okay, well, like this is a decent individual doing his best to do right by underrepresented groups. And the final product does justice by them. And so I like that about the new version as well.
I think that's another. We've talked about this on the podcast before. Again, we're cursed with knowledge, because
Yep.
we learn about the problem. How Joss Whedon is problematic. We learn about how back in the day, people would go see Buddy Rich and his band play, and it's like they would see him smiling, they would see this awesome drummer and this just ripping band. It was awesome, and they did not know, unless you were in the band or knew somebody in the band, did not know how big of an a-hole Buddy Rich was. We now know because those stories have been passed down, but you did not know that he would fire bass players nightly, that there was a tape somebody made of him, firing a bass player on a bus and setting him out on a, deserted road in Iowa in the middle of the night because he didn't like what he did at a gig, So I think that's interesting that, that those things, it should those things, you know, do they get in the way? Should they get in the way? You know what I mean? It's like it's that whole it's kind of the Bill Cosby thing. It's like, can I still laugh at his dentist routine knowing what he did later in life? And that's I don't know, there's not really an answer to that. That's just something we all have to struggle with.
And I think in this case, what's interesting is that kind of specific breakdown, which is like, let's look at it shot by shot. Oh, okay, here are Diana's people being presented in a very negative way.
They still had Gal Gadot in tight leather pants walking to meet Cyborg and shooting her from behind. It's
come on.
Let's not make it out to be like they're all wearing habits and everything was okie doke.
What? Okay, well, again, to be fair though, one vision was clearly better than the other. Maybe neither is perfect, and I'm not arguing that. But one vision did a much better job. Again, you can look at it shot by shot. And I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful that we have the ability to look at the work, because the work affects people. Little girls will go see these movies.
Yeah, no, I totally agree.
Oh, yeah, all the women are sexualized. What's going on with that? I don't get it, And it's like, it's almost subliminal unless you're looking for it, and it can affect people in a really profound way. And again, I don't want to get into modern liberal super sensitive people thing, because it's just like, yeah, I get it. At some point we overanalyze and get to a point where it's like it's not helpful anymore. But I think it's something like this, you can see those differences, and when you can see them, I think it's fair to point it out. And if the guy's a turd, if Bill Cosby's a turd, but his comedy's still good.
There's the title of this podcast. If Bill Cosby's a turd, that's the.
Yeah.
Well, that is
a different thing.
That is a struggle. We've talked about this before. It's like, and so. And maybe it is that, again, that's why I didn't have as much of a reaction to the original Justice Leagues, because I was blissfully ignorant, and I put that in kind of italics and quotes and everything. I'm not saying that, maybe I should have been more informed as to what was going on with this, but it's like, I like the original Justice League movie, and it it did not objectify anybody any more than any other movie that I had seen, but you're right. Britt and I noticed that, where it was, and we were looking for that, to see how did they portray these things. And so
can I challenge you on that right quick, Aaron?
Oh, sure.
You don't need to know. Let me just say, you should need to know that. Not necessarily you don't have to. You should need to know that. Ultimately, the movie was the comedy album or the music album or whatever. The piece of art has to live on its own, because the creator will die at some point, will pass away. And the only thing that will be left is the art. Nobody has stories right now about Leonardo da Vinci, whether he was a good guy. Maybe there's some stories about him, but most of us only know the Mona Lisa. Most of us only know Sistine Chapel, those kinds of things. Tchaikovsky, was he a nice guy? Was he a total tool? We don't know. Everybody knows the 18th Overture because it's been featured in so many cartoons. So I I think in some ways kind of funnily to bring it back to Star Wars, I think Star Wars, A New Hope, 1977, is the birthplace for a lot of this hunger to know more, to know as much about possible about the creators and the artists and the makers of our properties. And now, thanks to the internet, thanks to media, thanks to the need for people to tell themselves, we know way more than we necessarily have to know that we ever thought we should need to know. It's like I said, if it's something that you want to know more of,
Well,
fine. But ultimately, your relationship between you and the art is what matters.
I do think that it gives you a larger picture of,
Mhm.
a greater understanding of, if you know more about the composer, you know more about the
Right.
director. So you see what they're bringing into things. So I do think that is important. I don't think you should have to do your research before you go see a movie. I'm not saying that,
Mhm.
but
Right, right.
however, it is kind of like, what the original Jefferson in Hamilton. He had a great quote. They were interviewing him. He said, "You know what?" He's like, "Yeah, Thomas Jefferson, wrote these wonderful documents. Wrote the Declaration of Independence, had these great things, but he also sucked.
Yeah,
He owned slaves, and he like I said, he wrote these great things, but he sucked. And you know what? He can be both." It's
yeah,
like,
Right.
and that was that was a really, that took, again, took Brittany and I by, is like, wow, that is a great lesson to learn, because it's like right now it's like either all of Bill Cosby stuff is bad, or you're a horrible human being for listening to Bill Cosby. And it's like, no, I think that I can still say, or like I said, Buddy Rich, man, he's a great drummer, but what an a-hole he was. Those
And
two
Aaron,
things can stand,
yeah,
by themselves. So, yeah, go ahead.
you can take it a step further. Like the art itself can be both things. It can be valuable and entertaining and interesting and still be problematic. And I'll give you an example
Yeah.
right now. Quentin Tarantino films.
hmm
Dude loves to drop the N word, like to an obsessive degree. Like you're seeing an N word here and there,
Mm-hmm.
and again, does that mean that he himself is a racist? I don't know that. Does it does it affect the work if he were to take it out? Probably in a positive way, but he insists on putting it in there. And so I go in when I watch something like Pulp Fiction. I love Pulp Fiction. I think it's an amazing film, but I still have to hear about dead inward storage. And it's like, did that have to be in there? No, it really didn't have to be in there. And I just recently wrote about Punch Out on my blog, the old NES game. It's a great game. Everybody should play that game. It's fabulous. But there's some
Oh,
stereotypes
you
in
think?
that
Yeah,
game.
just a
Oh,
bit.
And
I
a
love it.
lot
I
of
love
the
it when
art that
Piston Honda is saying, Toyota, God, yeah, it's like, man, it's
a,
awful. But yeah,
a
it's a
lot
great
of
game.
our art is like that.
mhm.
And again, it's an interesting question. Do we need to censor it? Do we need to change it? Because we're circling back to the giving the artist free reign to make changes to his work after the fact. And I think for me personally, I still like to experience whatever it was in its original form, because that's how I originally experienced it, and it captures a moment. It like
So,
the racism in this country is not like solved by any
Mhm.
mean, but like 1993 racism is probably um a little different than today's
Yeah.
in some respects.
you just said something
I,
that just triggered something. I think it'd be really, it's really, again, I go back to that whole, patron idea, that, so the king hires Hondel to write for his, boat party. Warner Brothers hired a writer and director to make this movie. And so if they decide midway through, okay, we're going to go over here. So it would be interesting if in those cases, if there was somebody who wanted to pony up the money and go to, for example, let's take, oh God, who is the director that was originally supposed to do episode 9? Help me out.
Colin Trevorrow.
Yeah, Colin Trevorrow. Find him and say, hey, dude, we got a pile of cash for you. Make the Star Wars movie you wanted to make. You know what I mean. You know what I mean, because it's like Warner Brothers is a patron for this, movie, but there can be a patron for, I know copyright law gets into, problem here, but it is that they're being hired to do a gig, and so that's why I understand Zack Snyder being upset that what was released was not his vision, but for horrible circumstances you weren't able to put out your vision. So that's why that's one thing that kind of sat irky with me with this situation, was that it's I don't know, it was kind of like that's
I guess
I'm trying not to sound like an insensitive jerk here, because it was awful circumstances that took him away from this movie, but it's kind of like I had to hand over all my work to other writers for 2 weeks while I went and dealt with my dad's funeral, and so I come back and it's like, well, that's not the article I would have written, so I don't get to spend Google's money by rewriting all these articles. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's kind of, that's the one thing that sat irky with me, was that, but then on the other side, I guess I can't feel bad for Joss Whedon, because he made a whole lot of money to make this movie, whether or not Warner Brothers made money on it or not. So,
right. But I think it's, because this isn't the first time that a work has been taken from a director, from a creator, and finished without their blessing. I mean, even just in movies, there's famous cases of the likes of Blade Runner and Dune and Kingdom of Heaven. Poor Ridley Scott has a bad track record with that, where eventually he ends up having to release director Scott that better get to his vision and what he wants to do. And what's interesting, sometimes seeing the vision of what he planned, you go like, wow, that makes so much sense. Blade Runner's director's version is a much better film than the theatrical one, just flat out. But that doesn't necessarily mean that people who saw Blade Runner in theaters in 1982, that's devalued. I think the difficulty whenever you get to see, because ideally in a perfect world, Zack Snyder would have been able to finish it the way he wanted back in 2017, and
do you think it would have been? Do you think it would have been any more successful? Let's just get out the crystal ball and look objectively. And so,
no,
do you think it would have been any more successful?
I think it would have done about the same. I think it would have done, because realistically,
so why do you think that? Why do you think that?
Well, two things. First of all, Warner Bros. Had said flat out, we are putting out a 2-hour movie. There's no way they're putting out a 4-hour movie. So a lot of the stuff that we like, whether it's the increased character moments for Cyborg, for Flash, for Aquaman, some of that stuff would have ended on the cutting room floor, regardless of what Zack Snyder wanted to do. So that would have been an issue. But I also think in 2017, this version of the DC movie universe had kind of burnt itself out. People were ready. They just come off Wonder Woman being colorful and light and uplifting.
And Dave's nodding, so I'm gonna throw this over to Dave. Yeah. That's really interesting to say, given to the guys who had me watch a gazillion movies this summer from the same universe of comic books, that we're saying that DC, who had a handful of movies, had like
Mhm.
worn out its welcome, but by God, let's have no you Dave gets to speak to this, but by God, it's like all the Marvel stuff is okay. I'm just kind of being agitator right now. But Dave, you were
Mhm.
nodding. Why do you agree with that? Why do you think DC had worn out its welcome?
I think the point that Fredo was making was the tone. I mean, they had created these dark, grim movies, and
That movie that
audiences
took of
weren't
him.
responding.
And but then
And
you
and
but
then and then, like you said, Wonder Woman comes out, and you're like, wow, where'd that come from? This is great. This optimistic and bright, and it speaks to like
and then
finding the best in people.
and then we get Justice League that has some jokes that make me laugh, and then we get the director's cut that just takes out every funny thing out of the movie. But anyway, keep going.
Well, but like the point being, like, not so much, is it humorous, but does it speak to the human condition in a positive way? And I think
Sure.
like that's something that Snyder's cut does a much better job of. And it's like this is slightly off topic, but I did want to make this point. I think like it's really, really meta that this is a movie about second chances,
Mhm.
because this is what Snyder got. He got a second chance to make this movie. And like all the way across the board, it's about these people trying to right wrongs or
Sure.
come back from the dead in some cases, to make right. And I love that about it. Again, it's not a perfect movie. It's I can't imagine sitting down and watching it again unless like at some point it's just like on the TV. Um, but
Oh,
you know what I mean? Like I'm going to
it's gonna
devote
it's,
four
it's gonna be
hours
on
again.
TNT for the entire day.
Yeah.
Between that
Yeah.
and the Batman v Superman director's got to be all
Yeah.
24 hours.
But at the time, to back to the original point, I think at the time it again, he wouldn't have been able to release this film. And so like it wouldn't it would have been a little bit different than Joss's. It would have probably been more depressing, but it would have been about similar length, choppy as heck, uh problematic in a lot of the ways that the original cut was.
I will, in closing, I will say this: if you haven't watched Justice League on a Friday night or a Saturday night, if you're not going to church on Sunday, here is the Justice League Snyder Cut drinking game. Every time they use slow motion, you take a drink.
The Huda Jedi podcast will not be responsible for alcohol poisoning, passing out, potentially making out with somebody you shouldn't have, or other mistakes made by drinking that much.
Because oh my good lord, does Zack Snyder like his slow motion?
Mhm. See, this is where I go regarding Snyder getting full freedom to make this. You are getting the full Zack Snyder. Because if you ever see 300 or Watchmen, he is slow mo guy. He is composition shots that look like something out of an art piece or a music video. This is him going, I am making this the most Zack Snyder movie ever.
And by the way, if you have to go diving into Leslie Jones's Twitter feed because she live tweeted watching um, the Snyder Cut, and
Oh God.
when it got to the epilogue, she was like, "What in the f is this? It's like, what is going on here? I'm so confused."
Weren't
So,
we all?
oh my gosh, yeah. Yeah, no, I thought this was a really good discussion. I mean, so yeah,
We probably didn't discuss a lot of the nuts and bolts of the movie, but that's all right. You should just watch it.
yeah. I mean, if it is, and the other thing that we're also, when I say we're cursed with knowledge, it's also we're cursed with having seen the first Justice League. Again, it would be really interesting to have like a controlled study, where you could have, one person watch the original and one person of similar tastes and things like that, whatever, watch the Snyder cut and just to see what their reactions are. Because I know watching this movie, I was constantly comparing it to the first one, and trying to figure out what had changed. And, instead of just, and so maybe my comments are all tainted because I was looking through a different glass, um,
Mhm.
anyway,
No,
so
no, and I think, I mean, there is no, and this is kind of, I guess, what I'll end with this. There is no right or wrong choice. You, art speaks to you. Art speaks to you. If it's something that connects with you, just on a I liked it better level. There's many people who buy into Zack Snyder's sensibilities, and I'm glad for them that they have this. There's many people who don't like Zack Snyder's sensibilities. There's another version of this that exists that they can
well,
enjoy.
I think
Uh,
I think that's a very
mhm,
good point because that's something I always sort of loved is that value is not the same as liking,
mhm,
and that I think there's a lot of value to this cut. It's okay if
right.
Lucy barks. I think there's a lot of value to this cut, and just because I didn't like it doesn't mean that it is not worth watching. That there aren't good things in it. It was not. I like the other one better. I like pepperoni better than hamburger, whatever it might be. It's still,
Right.
you know, um, so I mean, there's a
I
hell of a lot of interesting stuff in it, but like I said, value is not the same as liking. So that's what I can't stand it when people say that was a horrible movie. I didn't like it. It's like, well, you didn't like it doesn't mean it's a horrible movie. Dave?
I think if you value the medium, or you value filmmakers and creative visions and things of that nature, it's like, oh yeah, I really like this stuff. It's like you kind of owe it to yourself and to the filmmaker in this case to actually just sit down and bite the bullet and put the 4 hours in and watch the silly thing, because it's like it's not, again, it's I don't think it's going to be life changing for everyone. There's going to be a lot of people who just don't like it and don't get it, but um I think it's important. And I think, like, again, we just for what it says, I have to support this kind of creative project personally, because I support it. Like my opinion is that more of this should occur. So by extension, I have to go and watch it and give them my time and my attention. So
I was just gonna say it's always difficult and kind of sad when a director or creator doesn't get to have their vision put out there. I mean, there's no guarantee, there's no mandate that it should happen, but it's always better when it does because that way, look, if it succeeds or it fails, if it finds out it doesn't have its own merit. There's never that fear of, well, I could have done more. And George Lucas always says if you put out a movie unfinished, because you got to put out a movie at some point, you can't just simply keep editing and recutting and refilming, trying to perfect it because
Unless that
that's
first
the
movie makes you billions of dollars that you can then keep re-editing and
and release and redoing a new thing every time a new movie format is released and you can sell it to people. You're right, but by and large, I mean most creators get one shot at it, and then if you're
well,
lucky, and you get another one.
let's be honest that um, most movies, I mean, Star Wars is and the original trilogy, I will say, is the total unicorn because George Lucas didn't have a committee making that movie. Most movies made today, I mean, yeah, the director and the writers have a vision, but it goes through a lot of stakeholders. And
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of cooks in that kitchen. And so you're not seeing, you know, put director's name here, you know, vision of the movie that you liked. It was all those people that are in the credits at the end that we all skip through. You know what I mean? Um, I thought this was a good discussion. This was kind of interesting. Uh, so but so thank you guys for your thoughts and putting up with me being antagonistic. I blame the Jameson. So but it makes for good discussion. So
Mm-hmm.
hey, yeah, if you liked what you listened to, tell your friends that they can find us, where they find podcasts and things like that. And you can bug us online and on Twitter and on Facebook, stuff like that. Like I said, we like to be deviated from our jobs every now and again to talk nerdy stuff like this. And until then, we will say who dat,
Who
Who
dat?
dat?
and everybody have a great week, and go get your damn shot. We'll just say it that.
McConkey.